button because it is about that time. I've got the frames somehow set up correctly, so people are likely listening to us right now. I'm going to navigate to the YouTubes myself, and we should be live.
I do not see us.
It says upcoming. Is it streaming?
Here we go.
Are we there now? Live. Excellent. Okay, so we are live. Let me start sending out these messages, and I'm going to shut my door, and then we'll get started. Actually, let me shut my door. My dog's,
okay, so
my dog's
we
here.
are live.
Ooh, I'm going to have to mute that, so...
Let me start sending out
no,
these
not
messages,
pause.
and I'm going to shut my door, and then we'll get started.
Live there, and mute. Okay, let me shut this door, and then I'll get it set up. Go outside.
My live never comes up very quick.
Late trick on my dog, I'm sorry.
God, so mean.
Okay. Push that back.
Reid, that's just horrible.
Oh, I said that was horrible?
Yeah, your dog trusted you, and you just...
Well, she went outside of the office, technically. Okay, top chat, live chat, sharing the YouTube link on the Twitter.
Guys, just so you got a heads up, I got a call from work about...
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're frozen again, video-wise.
Yeah, Reid, I got a call from work, so I'm having to do a little bit of work on the side tonight, too.
No problem.
Well, I mean, you can kind of chill out while Ben's talking.
Yeah, I got a guy working in Chicago, and he couldn't get logged into his machines.
Oh. So are you trying to help him log in, or are you doing his job for him?
No, it's my job that is not working for him right now, so I'm fixing my job.
There we go.
Gotcha.
Jason, yeah, you are frozen right now. I'm not sure if you can hear us. It may be a situation where you need to do like Sherry and maybe just go ahead and stop your video. That might help your bandwidth some. So if you want to give that a shot, we can see how that works. If you guys can help Jason with that as I get the social stuff shared, which for those of you with us right now, good evening, Chris. How are you? Thanks for joining. I'm going to get these socials shared.
Yeah, Jason, if you pull up your mouse to where like the big red button is for leave call, next to that is a looks like a camera button. You click on that and it'll turn off camera. So that might be the best thing, because right now you're just kind of staring at us creepily because you're frozen.
Oh, it's gonna happen again. I'm gonna have to drop the frame. Let's see here.
I'm split in two. This is not okay.
You are split in two, so we're just gonna have to move the. Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
Chris, this is the bad thing about this tech is I think if it's much harder for people who are special guests to use, because we've had problems every single time, except from one.
We might have to be able to use like Zoom video or something. I did that with Ben. It says it only has a 40-minute limit, but my wife says when she uses it that it is always like, you can go a little bit more. So we'll see. All right, but I've got this, got that switched up. So if Jason comes back, we'll just roll with that classic setup. Shared their social, back to my social, heading over to the Reddit social.
Yeah, Chris, aren't you glad you get to experience all the technical problems with this? That's the real joys of podcasting.
You suggested title.
So Chris, are y'all gonna beat DC United, or am I gonna have to play Wayne Rooney at see Wayne Rooney at Yankee Stadium? Because if Josie's hurt, I don't know who's gonna win that game. Yeah, I filled out my bracket today, and I felt it was too boring. I felt like I need to go back and make it.
Okay, All right, so we've got that posted at Reddit. We've got that posted on social media. If you have not already and you are joining us, the 5 of you so far, please share out these messages on social. We are getting all that going. I'm hoping more people will join us because we do have a great interview with Ben Baer. It's recorded it a little bit earlier tonight. He and I chatted for a few minutes. And so I got questions from Mike and Blaine and other people from the community beforehand, though. So it's pretty good talk. Of course, there's not a whole lot we know right now.
Huh, looks like there's a problem.
I think that was Google talking to me. and I don't know if that was my wife doing a broadcast or if Google was being a creepy ghost. I think it was just Google being a creepy ghost, or it thought that I said something that activated it, because usually it makes a little beeping sound. But that was funny. You all got to hear my Google Home, my Google Home talking to me. Or maybe it's some hacker who's joined in and is like, I can see you. I figured it all out.
Yeah, it's gonna take me a lot to put one of those things into my house. They creep me out. I'm not gonna lie.
We've got a couple of them. It's the first time it's done that, though. I probably did say something that thought it triggered. Okay, let's see if we get any messages from Jason. I'll send him a message on email, and then we'll get ready to get started.
So did either of y'all celebrate Triple Force Friday?
What?
No. What is that?
The debut of all the new Star Wars merch.
Oh.
Oh! I saw the Legos and things and stuff come out. I'm trying to minimize though my impact of the new stuff. I did see a cool Lego ATST with the Mandalorian though that I'm tempted for, but I really want to get.
Yeah, that looks good.
I really want to get the Tantive 4. That's one of my dream sets. So I may just have to grab that.
Yeah, man, Legos are so expensive nowadays, and the problem is with a 5-year-old boy. Unless I build more shelves to put them on, like a really nice set will be intact for about a week.
There's the somewhat sacrilegious option, and that's that you super glue all the pieces together so they don't come apart.
That is sacrilegious because Legos are meant to be played with. I have a whole bunch of the Nexo Knight stuff that's just ready to go for whenever I have a kid to play with. But I actually read an article once that said that the price of Legos have stayed pretty constant when you factor in inflation on the per piece price, especially when you look at unique pieces would have a higher per piece price than the standard 4x4 blocks and things like that, that it's actually not that much more expensive than it would have been when we were...
Well, I mean, I will say with the sets that I've built, there have been a lot more special pieces, so I do get that. It's just like, when you're looking at most of these stuff, like most of it is $50, as a parent, you're like, ugh.
Oh, yeah, well, they come up with the awesome things where it's like, this is an $800 starter store, and I'm like, no, I'll save up for the $200.
I helped a buddy in college build the $800 Star Destroyer.
Nice. They just came out with a new one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have 5 people watching with us right now. I've messaged Jason. So for those of you watching right now, we invited Jason Morris back since he had some technical problems last week. It seems like maybe we're having some similar issues with him this week. So we're going to work through that with him as we continue with our episode. So if you guys are ready,
let's do it.
We'll go ahead and get everything.
One last time.
That's right. One last grand hoorah. So, push to talk. Everything's good to go. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final 2019 season review episode of the MLS Fantasy Insider. This episode is brought to you by... That's it. The end of the game. The season's over. No, just kidding. It's brought to you by the MLS Bracket Challenge game. That's right. The fantasy season does not have to end. You can still go out and play that easier game to get some of your MLS fantasy action on as the season winds down. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and this podcast, as always, is brought to you by the amazing community of r/fantasy MLS and the amazing Patreon supporters that have been with us for the past several years. We've had several of them on the show this past few weeks. Yes, this intro is different because it's a special episode. But just thank you so much for everyone who's been supporting us and being a member of this community. You're fantastic, and you are the reason that we're here. So these shows are brought to you by you primarily, in addition to the funny little gags that we like to have. I'm joined by my usual co-hosts, Michael Denton and Blaine Riffle. How are you guys doing?
Doing
Good.
well.
Fantastic. As I said right before the show started, Jason Morris is going to try to be with us again tonight. He had some technical problems last week, and he may be experiencing some of that again this week. It might be a bandwidth issue when we're streaming live. So he's going to work through that and see what he can do. But we're going to get started talking with you all because we have a fantastic show tonight. It's our annual season review interview with Ben Baer to get his first thoughts on how the season's gone. Their initial thoughts, not a lot of time to do the crunching of the numbers yet, but Ben is pre-recorded interview with us because he's got some sort of soccer ball game or something tonight that he had to go to. So we're going to play that for you in a few minutes. But first, we're going to get started with a quick little review of round 31, mostly to talk about how our teams did, but how the leagues ended up finishing. So, Mike, how'd you do?
98. I saw the Valeri stuff and for some reason had thought that I had changed him out, and then looked on my team Sunday night and realized I hadn't. So that was the big
Rough.
hurt. The other thing was believing that DC United would score goals was a bad assumption. Instead of going heavy with Hamid, I did have Birnbaum in defense, but I went with Areola and then Quincy Amarikwa because Ola Kamara only made the bench. No one scored any goals despite Cincinnati having 2 players on red cards. I don't know why DC's in the playoffs. They're just one of those teams that probably is going to get knocked out first round unless Josie's hurt. But yeah, and then I also had Josie, so only 2 points there. But I did Captain Vela, I had Barrios, and Pozuelo, so it wasn't all lost. But yeah, I'm kind of 98. I've been mostly weak ranks, like in the low 1000s, but that's not really all that great. So finished overall rank 530, and I should have found out what my team's value was, but I forgot. Team value is about 125.4.
Blaine, what about you?
Yeah, I had a really bad round this one. I got 93. I did go with the Orlando defense that we were talking about, which really sucked. No
Well, at least
DC
it wasn't
defense.
the Sporting Kansas City defense. Oh,
Oh,
sorry. As you were.
No, that's fair is fair on that one. No, I actually I had Dick on the bench and he got 1 point, which was only a point worse than Rowe. So not really losing much there. And then I also had Lindsay on the bench for a -1. So I saw how bad it was. No, Cannon on the bench came in for 11, but I kind of swung for the fences when I saw the lineups. When I saw Martinez was playing, I went out and grabbed him, and he got 14, so I was happy there. Zlatan getting 8 kind of hurt, and then Captain Vela. But I was banking on more from DC, and Areola got the 6, and then Piatti and Nani got me a combined 4 points this week. I was expecting more from both of them, and I missed. I was trying to make some big moves, hopefully try to get into the top 400 at the end of the season, and I ended up at 561 and went backwards this week. But I got to gamble to go big. I think worst thing I did, though, is I had Aspria on the bench, and I was doing this on the fly while I was out with my wife, and I missed that I didn't have a spot for him to come into, and And so I left 12 points stranded there with a 1 and a 3 in my starting midfield. So yeah, that hurt.
I see Jason is trying to load back in. Are you with us yet, Jason? So Jason's loading in. As for myself, I had a great week. Sorry, guys. 128 points.
I think
Oh, Jason, are you back with us?
hear me, see me?
We can't
We
see
can
you,
hear you.
but we're doing a rundown of how our teams did. So I'm going to run through mine, and then we'll let you see how you did, okay? All right. 128
I think I
points.
might
Go.
camera that might help.
Yeah, turn off your camera. Are you with us? You guys are witnessing this live, the beauty of amateur podcasting at its finest. So 128 points is what I ended up with. Week rank 28. Overall 93, so I was able to
nice.
squeeze into the top 100, which is my goal every season. So that was great.
Congratulations.
Number one, thank you. Number one in the FC Cincinnati week this week. Overall, I was third in the FC Cincinnati league, so it was tough. It was tough. 4 points out of second, so that was pretty rough. For my team, I went all in with the DC United defense. Birnbaum, Bryant, Hamid got me all kinds of points right there. 8, 8, and 7. Went with Matt Hedges. Got a goal out of that one. Had Barrios, had Blanco, had Pozuelo, had Pavone. So I had all kinds of points right there. And then I went with the Vela captain. So that was ACV as always. On the bench, not as what I hoped. I was on the fence of going with Andrasic or Ibobasi for one of my Otteru forwards, and I ended up going with Ibobasi. Wish I had gone with Andrasic, but I did not. But I had Ibobasi, Eriksson, and Kamara, so I got the 4 points from Eriksson and 8 points from Kamara, switching in right there for my 128. Ending the year with a team value of 131.2, so not too shabby. Pretty pleased with that. Saw a lot of great scores. At least we got here with chat. Kyle had a round rank 282, overall 240, a total value of 127, not bad at all. Chris had 113, week rank 416, final rank 520. That's awesome. You guys did very well. So congrats to everyone who met their goals or came close to their goals. If you didn't meet your goal, there's always next year, and I know that you guys can do it because this is a great group of people who can help you. I want to give a quick shout out before we get to our interview with Ben for everyone in our other leagues. In the Patreon League, the fall season ended with a bang as always. Let's see here. Let me get the leagues loaded up. Our Patreon head-to-head league. It was very tight, and at the end, Skiles did pull it off with a total record of 13-1-1 with 40 points. Ryan Anderson bumped up to second in a crazy game. Seagraves fell all the way down to fourth, right out of the money right there. And so it was a crazy right there. But congrats to Skiles for getting first place in the Patreon League. Over at the hosts head-to-head league, that was also crazy. It came down to myself and Sherry in the final head-to-head game. She said on Twitter that it was not even close. The score was 114 to 128, so I beat her by 14 points. But in this kind of a final round, I think that's pretty close. That was a fantastic game. Sherry is a fantastic player. I thought I was going to lose going into this round. It was DC United versus FC Cincinnati, so at least one of those games turned out the way that I wanted it to. Though I won't complain too much because I got all those points off of the DC United clean sheets. So that was great right there. I'll also give a shout out to the MLS Fantasy Boss Open Leagues right there. It's Norman who took first place in that. You will get I think Norman might have been the number one overall maybe. But you'll get some swag as well as a second and third place member. And then over at the r/fantasy MLS League, loading that up real quick.
Norman was Bearcat Boys SC.
Yes.
He's number 2.
2 over. Okay.
Number 1 was Blake will like this. Blaine will like this. A Sporting KC fan, Goff, Dunder Mifflin the team.
Dunder Mifflin A team. Nice. And then the r/fantasy MLS Fall League, number 1 goes to Ardent from Dudley Street Hooligan. So remember, if you have not signed up for the spreadsheet, the Google Doc, to be able to win, you all won't actually win, and I'll just keep going on the list until I find the people who did win. So, but congrats to all those. Thank you so much, everyone, for playing. It's been fantastic. The round was great with all kinds of crazy goals and crazy storylines, and it was absolutely bananas. But what you all have come here to talk about is not what happened in round 31. Maybe not necessarily talk about. If you're in chat, you're here to talk about it. If you're listening to us, you're going to listen to our conversation about it. But you've come here to talk about the 2019 season as a whole, not just round 31. You want to know just our reactions for, did we like it, what worked, what didn't, what could be improved. And I'm going to try some of this again. This is some technology that we have. I interviewed Ben Baer before the show tonight. He had some other commitments. He couldn't be with us, so I interviewed Ben Baer. Got a 30-minute interview with Ben that I'm going to play right now for everyone. Mike and Blaine are going to switch probably to unmute the YouTube channel so they can actually hear it. For those of you in live chat with us, please let me know if you can hear the audio from Ben, because I believe that's what's going to hinge on this working. So if you can hear this, let me know in live chat. But here's our interview with Ben Baer, and I will go ahead and say right now that, of course, we know this has been just being a great guy, giving us some advice. All of this is just Ben's thoughts right now, nothing super official at this time. But with that said, here is Ben Baer. Okay, right now I'm joined by Ben Baer from MLS on video. Awesome, great technology we have nowadays. We were just talking about, and he's here to talk about the recap for the 2019 fantasy season. It's just ended. He's barely had any time to think about this stuff, but he's so gracious to join us tonight to give us some of his just initial reactions from the season. So Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here as always. Unfortunately, I did not do so well to end the season. Kind of the most disappointing last 5 or 6 weeks I've had in fantasy, in MLS fantasy in a while.
I feel you. That was me in the middle of the season, and I really didn't think that I was going to make my general top 100 goal,
Yep.
but I did finish strong, so I was very pleased by the final. Though if you could spot me 4 more points, that would be secure second place in the FC Cincinnati League. That would be great.
I don't have that power. Yeah.
You hear it here, everyone listening. He does not have the power. Well, let's just jump right into this. I know you're going to go play some actual soccer ball pretty soon tonight. So we didn't have many changes. In fact, 2019 was the first season where we did not see a big overhaul of the game in a long time, at least 2 or 3 years. However, we still had some small changes, and I wanted to get your first reactions as to how they impacted the game and if you were pleased with those changes. So the quick reminder, the first one, which was likely the most noticeable by all of the players this year, managers only could select 3 players from a team instead of 4. So how did that work out?
That was great. I mean, I think that really helped diversify a lot of our teams. It made it a lot harder on every fantasy manager, to pick the right players, and even pick the right players from, if a favorite team was going in, and usually you'd have a player from each level, goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, and forward. Now you have to be a little more targeted with how you're going to pick your, those kind of players. Really diversify the teams. Even if everyone had a ton of NYC players, you could have 3 different NYC players from somebody else, and that kind of, I think it really helped have some more fun with it, as opposed to, I think, what we've seen in the past, which is a lot of same team, same player issues.
I love this change myself, and I even saw it play out in the final round when last week we were talking about our selections from DC, and I went in all with their defense and their keepers. And so I had 3 defensive units, and Mike and Blaine were talking about Quincy Amarikwa and other options. Paid out for me, for sure.
Yeah. I think I only had 1 DC player, so that didn't work out so well for me. But it was a defender, so I got that clean sheet, but I should have had more.
That's right. Hey, it's a 0-0 draw, so I can wear my colors and be okay. Second, and this was probably the most talked about change that we had, and it was an improved player pricing model to better react to players' most recent performance. So that was the promise at the beginning of the season. Do you
Yes.
think that played out?
I think it did. I haven't heard a ton of the chatter around it, to be honest. But I think it clipped. I think it matched what we saw from week to week in terms of player plays well, value goes up. It made sense. It made a little more sense than I think what we dealt with kind of last year. And I think it worked out well. I mean, I'm interested to hear, do we get a lot of diversifying opinions about it? I know Mike probably had some problems with it.
A lot of the chat was really mostly trying to figure it out. Everyone likes to crunch the numbers at the beginning, and I think really the only negative that I've seen most people talk about it is sometimes they felt overly penalized if a player didn't play, like he came on for a minute and you'd still see that drop. And so I think a lot of the chat was first kind of getting the feel for it, because I also agree. I think it matched up pretty well with how we saw players perform. But people took a few weeks to get used to it. But it was mostly, hey, this guy, he only played a minute. Why am I losing this much money? But,
yeah, I think that's definitely an issue. A lot of it, I'm assuming. I mean, what the main problem with this is if you have somebody in a double game week, and let's say they play the first game and then they come on as a sub for the last 20 minutes of the second game, that kind of could be a little bit of a problem. But not everything's perfect. I think it was a lot better than last year, and I think if you were following lineups, and I know we're gonna get into this in a second, but if you were setting a lineup and making sure the right players, I don't think you should really have that many issues with it.
Yep. And the third improvement that we talked about, at least was hinted at the beginning of the season, was improved app functionality. Maybe this is the most controversial, because I know I've saw people talk throughout the season of, hey, this didn't work, hey, that didn't work, and I know there were some growing pains as well this year. But how did the app integration play out for you?
I think it played well. I think there's always issues here and there with our app, and it's not obviously tied to necessarily fantasy. I know I've had times when I've opened our app and it didn't work or something, and I start screaming. But I think 98% of the time it's great and it works. It's easy for me if I'm out on a Saturday or doing whatever, and I see that somebody's not starting. It's the best thing as opposed to what we used to have to deal with. Excuse me, with dealing with mobile web, and I think it was so much better.
Yeah, it was. I think the only complaint I saw was when people did the share team function. It would basically share like, hey, I'm playing join up, and didn't actually just go, here's my team.
Yeah, I think that's something we could definitely look at going into next year.
Yeah. Well, those are just three of the features right there. Anything else that I missed right now that was a feature that you want to talk about how that played out?
No, I think we covered it. I think we covered it with saying, the whole point this year was that there wasn't going to be that many changes, and I think it made it for an easier experience, a better experience, and a more fun experience for me personally, even.
So this was the second year that we had a split season fantasy game, and again, this is something that I like. I like interacting with players, and I think it's good that people get sort of the chance to feel out the game before they really get into it. But do you still feel like this multi-season format was successful, and how did it impact the total player numbers?
I think it's still. I like it personally. I know the concerns of a lot of people, and we went over those last year. So in terms of total players, I think we did get a bit of a spike heading into the second season. I know I did, but on the negative side, I hear a lot of people, even in this office, saying, "Hey, I just want to see what my total score is for the whole season, or what my rank is for the whole season," instead of us trying to put those two things together. I think there'll always be issues, I think I definitely saw people who were tuned out 10 weeks into the year, and then once the new season started, they got right back into it, and then made a good run in the second half of the season. So I think it's something we'll continue to evaluate. We'll see what happens next year. But yeah, it's I like it personally. I think I see both sides to it, honestly, and I think like I said, it's something we'll continue to evaluate.
Was that Doyle or Bobby? Did they want to just have their overall points, just like point at it and brag?
Well, Bobby always talks about it, but yeah. Bobby always talks about this. But what's my overall?
That seems like.
But they're not the only people either.
What's my overall and expected fantasy points? That's
Exactly.
Bobby's contribution. We need that stat next year: expected fantasy points, or the Bobby Warshaw points. That's
Yep.
what we'll just call them. So many of these changes are focused on dealing with player burnout, and this is not a something that's unique to MLS Fantasy. It's every fantasy game always deals with burnout or players dropping off. So do you believe that these changes that we've made this season have helped deal with player dropout rates, and just more broader, what were the numbers like this year?
I don't have the number. I don't have the numbers personally. I've seen some numbers here and there. I think they're pretty similar to what we've seen in the past. Player burnout in fantasy sports is always going to be a problem with any sport: soccer, football, basketball, anything. I'm in 2 fantasy football leagues. I think there are at least 2 or 3 teams already who have stopped sitting in the lineup, and we're only 4 weeks into the season. To me, it's just a broader issue with fantasy, and we've tried things to alleviate that issue, to make it more fun for all of our players. But it's always going to be an issue, and I don't really think it's something we can look at and say, hey, we're doing a poor job because of this, because this number says, that these many people dropped out. I don't think you can really look at it that way.
Sure, yeah. I guess there's definitely a lot of reasons why people choose to come and go through a game. So do you have any personal ideas on what could help increase the fun to prevent that? Or do you think maybe there could be tools given to maybe fantasy leagues, like the head-to-head leagues, where the commissioners or the leaders could add or drop teams if they believe that they're not playing?
I don't know about that last one, but I think this is something, this is years.
All your opinions, nothing binding at this point.
We always talk about how to really engage our fans more regularly. There's always talk about, hey, let's do, a game let's do something special for a week. Let's do something special for a month. All that kind of stuff. That's all on the table, and I think that's something we'll continue to look at heading into next year. I would say one thing that's semi-related to fantasy is there was an announcement a few months ago, maybe even more longer than that, about MGM. I think you can expect to see something around that, but it may not be tied to fantasy, so we're not really sure. But that's something that help increase our engagement with the fans, maybe in a different way than we currently see. But again, that's something probably a little bit different and a little out there right now.
Sure. So a lot of this conversation really sort of tiptoes around the concept of hardcore versus casual fans. So we're just going to address that right now. How do you, and I don't know if it's appropriate to say your team with fantasy or if it's really just you, but so how do you and your team, will be generous, go about tackling the challenge of making a game that is both appealing for hardcore players and casual players?
No, first of all, there is a team. Not a very big team, but there is a team of us that think about this. It's always a delicate balance. Because we know there is X amount of hardcore players like me and yourself, Mike and Blaine, and everyone else who loves this game. And there's a lot of us. There isn't always enough. So the question is, how do you get more? And how do you make it interesting for somebody who's not going to be, into it week to week, or wouldn't really think about, hey, I'm an MLS fan, I'm an FC Cincinnati fan, I go to Nippert on Saturdays, but I don't really think about, hey, Sunday there's a Seattle Minnesota game, and I gotta pay attention to that to play MLS Fantasy. It's always a delicate balance, and every decision that we make is based off of how will this affect our hardcore fan audience, and how will this affect our casual fan audience. That's really the best way I can describe it, is that when decision making is we look at both is really what we're saying.
When I sent out some question requests on Twitter, I had a few people who responded to me about the transfer system. And throughout the season, I'm sure you get random DMs like this to you on Twitter. I had a few conversations with people on Twitter about, I don't like those unlimited transfers. I don't like these rolling transfers. This is garbage. I don't like that. So clearly the merits of the MLS fantasy transfer system is something that players still discuss. So just coming from you, the Fantasy Don, why do you think unlimited transfers is more casual friendly? Because I think that's what we've said before. That really helps casual players. And similarly, why do you think rolling transfers is more casual friendly than a set lockout time or set transfers?
All right, so unlimited transfers first. I think when we had the old game, which we all liked and loved, it involved way too much planning out 4 or 5 weeks in advance to to actually be able to set your lineup in a way where you can actually win. And once that happens, and you know you're not going to win, then what's the point of playing? So I think that was kind of what the unlimited transfers was about. Is that we felt that it was really finely tuned just for the really, really, really hardcore players, I think, in our opinion. Because if you're a casual fan, let's say you miss a week, or let's say you're not even missed a week, but like you screwed something up and you didn't set up your team in a way that you could still add Nicholas Odero when he has a double game week against Cincinnati and Vancouver, that becomes a huge issue. I think, in my opinion, I think a lot of opinions around here. For the rolling lockout, I mean, it's funny for me to hear any complaints about this, considering where we were, 2 or 3 years ago, when every single complaint that was out there was, hey, I want to be able to change my lineup. This guy didn't start for some reason because we don't have official injury reports really in MLS. So this guy didn't start, and I didn't know, and now I'm screwed. So I know that's come off a little bit hard and harsh, but for me, I understand. Look, your people out on Saturday nights, they're doing stuff. They don't want to be looking at their phone. Obviously, I don't really share that because this is my job and this is what I do, and I always look at every lineup. Basically, I think I got screwed maybe once or twice this year, but I look at every lineup and I make those changes. I understand why you don't want to be doing that if you're enjoying life, maybe not watching MLS on a Saturday or Sunday or Wednesday. But I like it way better than if I didn't have the chance to change my lineup and let's say Max Morales is not playing for some reason, which I didn't know.
No, for sure. That's the line and the story I always preach, but it just means so much coming from the top down. Like that's it. And I think this is an example for everyone who's listening or watching. Like, this was a change that players wanted that was implemented. So if we're able to make like good, logical, reasoned out arguments for why we think a change would be beneficial for the game, it goes up the flagpole and can be listened to. So not everything we're going to say will be, but this is because of us. So we should own it and like accept it. And if we were wrong, then by golly, it's our fault too. So you mentioned Wednesday games, and that leads right into what I was going to talk about next, and it's double game weeks. And frequent double game weeks are just unique to the MLS fantasy game. Everybody has them when they kind of get near the end, like with NEPL, they have a few here and there, but it's almost every week for us. So as a fantasy player, do you or Bobby or Doyle, how do you all feel about the inclusion of double game weeks in the fantasy game, and do you believe that they are an advantage or a hindrance to casual players? This sort of builds off of we've had conversations. Yeah.
That last question kind of threw me off a bit. I would say they're an advantage because you can, to get what we were getting at before with the rolling lockout, is that if you set your lineup right on Wednesday, you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the week. If there's enough, obviously, if there's 3 to 4 games. So that's the way I'll answer that part. In terms of double game weeks and kind of in general, obviously it's a tough thing. I think a couple years ago, maybe, I don't know, I think it was maybe 2017. We tried, if there was 4 more games on a Wednesday night, which obviously there was less of in the past, we would just make it its own round. This year, we couldn't really do that because obviously it's about 23 of the 30 weeks were double game weeks. So if we're going to go into and say, hey, if there's 3 Wednesday night games, we'll just make it its own round, then guess what? We're looking at like 50 rounds. And that's just way too many. In my opinion, I think everyone's opinion around here is that we can't be looking at our fantasy lineups that much, considering everyone else's concerns about, rolling lockouts and all the limited transfers and everything involved with that. So, I think it's a unique challenge with MLS. And hopefully, I think maybe we'll see less of them next year. I have no insight on the schedule at all. But I think maybe we'll see a little bit less, but I think it's a unique challenge, and I think it can make it fun. I understand why people don't like it, and why they think maybe it's a bigger issue. But there's not much we can do about it without making way more rounds than we would want.
I've definitely seen a lot of interesting thoughts on the double game week subject from the community of people throwing out ideas. So if this is another opportunity for the community to have input, I think people have lots of feelings. I mean, it ranges from just don't include the Wednesday games to drop the lowest game to let people pick which game they want to going into it. So I think it's cool. I think that people have those ideas. I think some of them are definitely more hardcore or manager intensive than others, but I know this is something that people do consider, and I'd agree with some of the criticisms that it really does encourage the template teams, and I think that's what a lot of people worry about with double game weeks is you just pick all double game week players. If you're not doing that, you're wrong.
Well, I think having the 3 players instead of 4 helps alleviate that a little bit.
Sure.
So I think that was kind of big heading into this year. I think we would have seen a lot more kind of template teams if we didn't have that change. But yeah, I mean it's a problem. Interested to hear solutions. I'm not sure not counting games is one. I think every game should matter. Otherwise, what are we doing? But yeah, I'm interested to hear anything that anybody has to offer.
Yep. Well, maybe if you send out a survey, I bet people will fill it out. These people are pretty passionate. So you all continued your fantasy offerings from the league this year. We have Fantasy United FC videos coming to us live now. This is year 2 of that. So I just want to know, do you feel like the Fantasy United FC team improved, and just what's it like to get that show put together every week?
Improved? I don't know if I can say improved. Obviously, yeah, I think we had a little better. We didn't really have production, but we kind of changed the way we shot it a little bit. I think it was a lot better. We'll see what happens next year with it. Maybe we can add some graphics. I don't know. It's fun.
Like the old instant replay.
Yeah, well, that would be insane. But no, I think we walk out of it every week, and the 3 of us can all agree it's maybe the 20 best minutes of our week every week.
There you go. So what's your favorite Fantasy United FC story that you can share with us?
Story? I don't know. It's just Bobby being ridiculous every week. And because he'll hit up our Slack chat, hey, 10 o'clock in the morning usually, or something around there, and be like, hey, what do you guys want to do today? I'm like, we're going to talk about the fantasy game, and what we want to talk about. And then he comes up with some random ass strategy of, hey, we're going to do a draft today. We did that a few weeks. So we did that, different topics or different things. And Doyle and I just basically have to telling me to calm down, or hey, let's do that, and get really involved. But all the things that Bob wanted to do, I would love to see the trash pile that's there with the show. But they like having fun of it. Obviously, there was that one week or there was a couple weeks I wasn't there, and sometimes they can get into maybe some more non-fantasy topics, and I like to do that. But they love fantasy. They love getting into it. I think Doyle lost some steam towards the end of the season because he was so bad, and he felt like he wasn't involved anymore. But other than that, it was great. I mean, like I said, I think we all love doing the show every week.
So is it hard then to keep them? So it's not hard to keep them focused on fantasy and to keep them from going off to.
If I'm there, it's not hard to keep them focused.
Okay.
Because sometimes if I'm not there, we're not screaming at them about fantasy or telling them, hey, this is what I'm doing. Then they'll get on one subject, and then they'll decide to talk about the Philadelphia's triangle midfield for about 30 minutes. Whatever they would come up with to talk about, but that's just because they could talk soccer all day, and this is kind of their forum to talk about whatever they want. It's what they think, but we're talking about fantasy, obviously, 98% of the time.
So do you think that knowledge that they have, that pure soccer knowledge, is able to translate into fantasy success? I guess clearly for Doyle, maybe it didn't this year, but in general, do you think just knowing soccer helps you with fantasy, or is there extra bits and pieces and nuances that you have to learn to hone?
I don't think there is knowing soccer. I think there's knowing MLS. I think if you know, hey, you look at let's say, I don't know, a Dallas home game against Seattle, and most if a casual fan saw that, they think, hey, Seattle's going to win that. We know that Dallas at home is pretty incredible over the years, and they've put up a great record. And just using that kind of knowledge, or because they're all over the injuries and the disciplinary and all that. I think that MLS now, I don't think like really tactical knowledge can really help you that much, but I think MLS knowledge is super helpful.
So get a couple sort of serious questions here, and then one sort of fun wrap up one as we say, trying to be conscious of your time. What do you think is the biggest hurdle that the MLS Fantasy game is facing, and how do you think it can be overcome?
The biggest hurdle MLS Fantasy is facing. I think to get more integrated into MLS as a whole, not even just here in New York, but I think broadcast. I think if you saw all of our banners on the field this year, you saw a lot of MLS Fantasy banners. So like I don't think like marketing or anything like that can really be an issue. I think it's kind of just buying from all the people who are involved with the league on a day-to-day basis, which I think maybe is kind of lacking. Because I don't think MLS Fantasy comes up in regular discussion. I know like Minnesota did Jamie and Steve did it. That was great. Awesome. But yeah, just more buying kind of like that, I think, is how to overcome it. Just keep grinding. That's what I always say. Get
fans to message the league and the teams and the personalities.
We brought this up before, but I'm not sure that's the issue. That's really the solution, because I know, like, for me personally, like, I don't like being told I'm doing something wrong on Twitter. So that's not always the solution. And then like there's got to be something else that we can do, though. I'll say that.
That's true. No, definitely. We'll all think about that one. But no, that's great to hear, because I think that's what a lot of us talk about from times, is that we do wish that we saw it more. I remember a few years ago, Houston was great with their fantasy integration of the player would get to come to the back into the locker room and see somebody. And to me, that always stood out. Of some of these things seem so easy for a team to be able to do to help get that marketing and just that community feel going. And I do wish that more of that would happen. But when Bobby joined us a few months ago, he did make a really good point, because I also would wish that players would do more like Sal and Benny and people like that when they're doing their player things. And he just pointed out to me that I never thought about how this is a job for so many people, and maybe fantasy is too fun, and they're like, that's my job, I don't want to think about that. So I can see how that's a hurdle as well.
I will say that there's a couple months ago where producer Terrell let us know that Brandon Baer was watching the show. So there was one. We got one.
So we should do. That's what we gotta go. I know Quincy used to do his game a while back. Maybe we need to get the Quincy's and just send out a call out there to each team. Go, hey, do you guys like fantasy? Let's just throw us an idea. We'll go from there. Yeah, be a bottom up thing. So if you could do anything that you wanted with the fantasy game, what would you most like to change about the game from this year, and what would you most like to change about the league's approach to promoting the game?
Yeah, so it's quite. I don't know.
Maybe the second one's too hot, but just like for you,
no,
if you could do.
I think the second one's easier to answer than the first one.
Okay.
I think I don't actually know. These are both tough questions. Obviously, I'm not gonna put in position of our league and what we're trying to accomplish here on a day-to-day basis. I think we're all trying our best. So it's tough to say, hey, we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that, because then I'm pushing on people who are already trying their hardest on a day-to-day basis. Sure. So that's a little bit tough. So that's the way I answer that question. It's so tough. I would say, I don't know. I'm sorry.
I'll throw you one out for me. I'll throw you one out for me that's easy. Maybe you can latch onto this one. If I could change anything about the game right now, it would be to get like Continental or Cheez-It or someone to like throw us some of that sponsorship and just help with just support the game. Like throw us some money to get some prizes to go out there and be like, hey, this is the fantasy game brought to you by Cheez-It. Come help us and do that. Like that's what I would change. I think it's simple, maybe not too crazy, but if
no, that was
maybe it's
That
chicken
was
egg.
my idea, right? I just said that. You didn't say that. That was my idea, right?
You did say that. I just
Oh,
like
just wanted to
I
make
heard
sure,
it,
okay.
and
Got
the
it,
the
yeah.
audio went out, and I was just speaking
All
it
clear.
back.
We're
Yeah,
all
yeah.
good on that.
That's
Yeah,
what
that
it
was good.
was.
That was my answer. Got it.
That's what it was. We got it
Yeah.
right there.
Mhm.
All right, so final question here. Super fun one. This was actually
Yeah.
Mike's question that he submitted, and I loved it. Tell us, on his wedding registry, is Weeby registered only for wooden spoons? Because
I wish.
that's
No, unfortunately not. I did not see any wooden spoons on the registry, unfortunately.
I really
But-
think you all need to like present him with a wooden spoon, either at the beginning of the fantasy season or sometime like on.
I'll give it to him on his wedding day on Thursday. It's gonna be
Nice.
great. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Yeah, should be fun.
Love it.
Getting married. I can't believe it. None of us can believe it, but it's happening.
As a kid getting married, oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Yes.
It's crazy.
He's so adult. He's so adult. But not really.
That's true. We can tell that from on the podcast how he tries to keep everything all together,
Yeah.
all adult like. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for spending a few minutes with us, sharing some stuff. I know that as more information comes out, you'll definitely share that with the community. And I know you're busy right now too with this whole cup thing that's going on.
What's this playoffs?
I don't know. Whatever's going on.
Okay. Yeah.
But just before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to say as reflecting upon this season, or any just other comments you'd like to make to the fantasy community at large?
No, I think just that, in terms of the fantasy community, I just hope you guys enjoyed the season, and I think stick with us. We're all doing our best here. We're trying to make the best game for you. We talked about a lot of that stuff during this conversation, and thank you for playing. And I hope you enjoyed the game this year.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we're back, and Jason, I think you're back with us. Is that true? Maybe. We've got video for Jason, so we'll see if he's able to join us. So that was the interview with Ben.
Okay.
I think he might be back. But that was the interview with Ben. Guys, give me some of your reactions to those comments and answers that Ben gave us, and then chat. I saw you all talking during the interview. I took some notes, interacted with you all. Great fun. Want to hear your feedback as well in just a second. So, Jason, Mike, Blaine, how do you react to that? Mike, do you want to go first, or do you need to
I can
simmer?
And if we need to. I mean, I think in general it wasn't a whole lot that was surprising to me. It's kind of been the thing that Ben has been saying, all along about why he made the changes and why he's, set up the game the way the game is set up. So none of it's too surprising. I'm kind of interested to know that he knows that I'm the troublemaker. He does know us well, apparently.
It's your brand.
But other than that, apparently it is my brand. I don't know if it's like the Bobby Warshaw. I mean, there are some things that I disagreed with him on. I don't know if Reid or Blaine was watching, our video feed while there was a few times I was just like shaking my head, which we'll get into. But yeah, it's so I don't think there was anything too surprising.
Blaine? You're
You're
muted, Blaine.
muted still, Blaine.
I love that look.
Push it
I muted it. I I didn't want to accidentally make noise. No, pretty standard answers from what I was expecting. I think we did catch him a little off guard with the double game week question, which it was good to get some feedback on that and kind of see what he thought. I'm really glad he's kind of open to hearing ideas, even if he may not be open to changing how it works. But it does show that they're willing to consider some of the complaints the community has had.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it's not like we have a complaint, we tell it to Ben, and Ben's like, okay, cool, get it done. I agree, go. I mean, there's clearly, he's got pressures from his supervisor and for their sponsors, and there's the budget and all those things that have to be considered. So yeah, but no, it is great that he is open to ideas. He has responded to our feedback in the past, and I know that he can't do everything or all the things that we want, but he does have to keep sort of, I guess, that broader view. And then, like you were saying, Mike, yeah, some of the answers were probably fairly sterile, fairly standard. I think it's still fantastic that he makes himself available to us to be able to chat with the community. And to be fair, some of this is, I mean, literally we're just days off of the season being over, and not everything's had a chance to even really just sit back and take it all.
Yeah,
in
I'm not
either,
going
so.
after him for.
Oh
for
yeah,
that.
no, I didn't take it that way,
what
but
what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Jason.
it's things that he said before in the interviews, and it is great that he comes on and has this conversation with us. So, yeah, what's up? What's with Jason?
Yeah, what do you think, Jason, as a player? What do you?
No, I mean, I think you guys probably hit on the stuff that I would say. It was about what I expected from him, and it's totally great that, like you said, Reid, that you can get somebody. He's willing to come on this show, and answer questions. So, and the double game week thing is a conundrum for me. I didn't really with it. I think this year, especially for maybe some of the reasons that other players did, but I don't see a good way to fix it. At least not that I can come up with. So I think for the most part, I was happy with. I don't have a lot of specific comments. He kind of addressed some of the things that I had problems with this season, and so yeah, it was good just to hear him chat it up, and I hope Weeby gets his wooden spoon.
I think we all do. And I thought that was a great comment that Kyle had made during the interview, how he was wondering if limited transfers are even compatible with the MLS schedule, and kind of like what you were just kind of mentioning, Jason, like there's only so much they can work with. I mean, the schedule is what it is. The call-ups are what they are, and we have to fit that framework. And so to some extent, it's just doing the best that we can with the lay of the land that's available to us. But so yeah, I thought that was pretty fun. I thought it was interesting what he was saying about the app. I know Kyle again had made some comments about this, and I think Ryan also made some comments about it would be great if, I think you made these comments last year, Mike, if you could get alerts about specific players in your team, or even thinking, well, maybe I didn't really use the app that much, as maybe Ben was saying, that the mobile web may not have been that bad. So how much of the app did you all use?
I used it when I was on the go. So if it was an emergency and I happened to catch the lineup, I would use the app. But as far as setting my team, I think the app was a lot better when it comes to that. I thought it was a lot more user-friendly this year than last year, so I will give them credit for that. But, I still would sit down at my desktop because it was a lot easier. It was bigger to see, and you could sort more things. As far as that, I think there's like some cool features they could add on to, but I didn't have a whole lot of complaints as opposed to last year where it was just non-functional.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think they definitely did do a lot to help address some of. I mean, it was pretty much unusable last year, and it definitely was. I mean, mostly for me, it was a tool for switcheroos, because if they was already in my team, already there, pop, it could work. And I agree. If I had to build it with the app, it could be a bit cumbersome. Blaine, you had a thought?
Yeah. I've always said I've been a primary PC user. I love the interface on PC. You can see your players. You get that sidebar where you can see them. You don't get switched away from the field, and you can drop 3 and 4 players at a time and then see your whole budget and kind of pick and choose. But I found myself more and more as the year went on, especially for my last minute changes, sitting on my couch and checking lineups and making changes from my phone on the app. That's a first for me for this game, because I have normally, when I'm home, I run back to my computer and do it. And this year I found myself more and more just jumping into the app for those last minute changes. Maybe it was better planning on the season and knowing if this guy's not playing, I'm going to go grab this one. But I found myself doing a lot of the minor tweaks on the phone this year, which was good for me. And it made it a whole lot better that I was more familiar with it for these last weeks when I was making bigger changes on the fly. Like when I was out with my wife on Sunday, I made actually a pretty big roster overhaul. I think I switched out 5 or 6 players, and I did it all from the phone in a store. So, and I've never really used the app to that extent because it's just been so cumbersome. When I've had to do that on the move before, I've always logged into the actual website in Chrome on my phone and go that way, because it's got some of those same desktop features where you can delete multiple players. It it works almost identical to what I'm used to at home, but the app actually kind of took its place this year for my mobile transfers, so I'm happy with it.
Well, let's start talking about improvements. Ben kicked it off where he was talking about like getting some more of the promotion and interaction with the league was good. But let's just start talking about some of our thoughts. Feel free to bounce off that. And Mike, when we get to you, we'll let you have some thoughts about transfers, which I know you've been waiting to share with everyone. But Jason, let's just start with you. What are some things that you'd like to see in 2020 with the fantasy game?
Gosh. Well, if it's an app thing, I would just as a change, or maybe somebody can explain this to me. The thing about the app that I really didn't like, I think I used it the way that Mike did and Blaine did, right? So to set your team up using a PC and then to try and make changes on the fly, I was terrible. If I had to sub people out on my phone, that little button, for whatever reason on the app, it was really, really difficult. Like I would wind up like deleting people or getting them out of my squad. And usually it took a lot of trouble to somehow make that change. And maybe that's user error, or like I have an inherited iPhone that got handed down to me after 2 other people had it. So I don't really know, but that little thing as far as the app was something that I would think about. And I mean, I guess the other 2 things I wrote down were like, I would really like to not have double game weeks, but I don't, like I told you guys before, I don't see a good solution to it because, some weeks the double game week is there's one midweek game and then a whole slate of weekend games. And some other weeks it's just a ton of games and not. So I don't know how you solve that. But I guess the only other thought I had was I know that you'd never add this, but what about the idea of a utility player slot? I know there are some other fantasy setups for soccer, and to be honest, I don't really follow those that much. But I do know there are some that are set up where, you're not just hemmed into this many defenders, this many midfielders, and this many forwards. That there is a pool of utility players that you can kind of draw from, and you can say, you can put one of those in, right? As opposed to us being restricted to choose this many forwards, this many defenders, and this many midfielders. I don't know if that's something we could do or not.
That's cool. It sounds like you're ready for another overhaul of the system. Keep it fresh.
I don't know. I mean, I'm happy with the way it is too.
That's cool. I mean, I don't know if I think like baseball and stuff maybe has some utility players. I haven't played a fantasy game with some utility players, but I mean, I think it's a cool idea and definitely worth looking at. I mean, with just having a weird schedule, I could easily see how that would address some of the problems of this player didn't play, get this player to come in, just like this is a flex player. He can be a midfielder, he can be a defender, just sort of whatever happens. Maybe it even makes defensive midfielders more of an option where you can maybe give him a hybrid of, am I going to let him, do I pick to give them more defensive points or to give them more of the offensive midfielder points, and I can set that role and that will change how they're calculated. That might be too complicated, that might not be necessarily fair. Maybe it's too hardcore, or it could just be, as Ben talked about, trying to find that balance that maybe you get a flex player and this is it, and then the next level up is depending on how you want to move it, but you can go in as deep with it as you want. That's a cool idea.
I think DraftKings are one of those, like basically fantasy gambling sites. I think they use the utility player. I've never bothered to learn too much about it, but I've listened to some of the podcasts. So, you brought up one other thing I just wanted to ask about, and I missed the first part of the interview with Ben. So, the pricing scheme, I sent you an email about this. Like, I'm still confused about the pricing scheme for defenders and goalkeepers, especially. Like, at the end of the season, I just really thought defender prices were outlandish. It was just, I can't imagine Frederick Brillant. I mean, I paid like $10 million to have him on my team a bunch of times. Like, okay, I get it, and he's one of the highest scoring defenders in the game, but still, it's really boom or bust for most of these defenders. And I just thought that the pricing on them was just a little bit outlandish. So I don't know if there's a way to fix that or not, or maybe you just have to roll with it and it is what it is.
Oh, you're leading right into my first point that I was going to talk about. So if you want to segue that, Yeah, I was while Ben was talking, I was listening to that, but I was running some numbers because I wanted to see some things. Um, we had 12 players finish the season at 11 million value or higher. That's not terrible when we consider the number of super premium players we tend to see every year. And with those names, I mean, you're talking about Vela and Zlatan and Joseph being those top three. But then you've got Pavone and some other guys that were big playmakers, and you kind of had to work to get them in your team from time to time. Um, you go into that premium category, we always kind of consider it 10 million or higher. There are 26 players that finished the season at that 10 million mark or higher total. You had 24 players between 9 and 9.9, and you had 42 players between 8 and 8.9. And that's as far as I took it, because when you start going into the 7 million and below, you're looking for starters who just usually play consistently and have a decent matchup. So we're not looking at that. But that's a lot of players. That's 92 players to choose from in that upper tier of pricing. And I looked through the list, and I'm looking at the defenders too. I've been trying to run the numbers, and they look good. I mean, they look accurate. Last year there was a lot of criticism. Some guys going way high, way low, grabbing points where they could. But this pricing structure does hinge on consistency. And I'm looking at the guys who are at the top of the list, and they were consistent all year long. I mean, you've got Briant at over 10 million for defenders, but he's got 216 points. That's crazy, and his average is 6.3. But you look at who his partner is in Birnbaum. Birnbaum's got 189 points on the season, and he's averaging 5.5. Like, that's a sign that the defense is doing something right, or the defense is getting a lot of CBIs because the midfield's letting balls come through. But either way, I mean, that's not just an outlier number. That's a consistent thing for that defense. Minnesota's got guys all over the top on the averages, and their prices are kind of set to match it. Then we go with guys like Hollingshead. He was getting offensive points all season long. It's like every time he missed a clean sheet, he'd have an assist. And so that really helped inflate his price throughout the season. But the one thing this system does emphasize is consistency. What's his value? Bo for New England. He's one of those top players on his fantasy average because his numbers are there, but his price doesn't match his average as well. I'm trying to pull him up really quick. Yeah, he's at 10.7 with the 6.7 average. So he's in that upper tier, but with his average compared to the other forwards, he's up there near the top. It's just he had those off weeks every so often. He started off a little lower, came in really hot, raised his value, but then he started having those off weeks, and he really never cracked that 11 to 11.5 mark, because every time he'd get one game away from it, he'd have a dud. And that kept him just outside that 11-0 mark. And so I think we're seeing what we want to see with this. Heber's another one. He's at 9.9 to finish the season. He had a couple of sub-ins there towards the end of the season, didn't get the starts at the end. Average is still 6.2, but his overall price stayed a little lower because he had those off games. And we kind of see that throughout the season. Guys who subbed in at different times, missed a game here and there or whatever, their price stayed a little bit lower, even though their average is a lot higher than some of the other players around them. And so I think the system was actually working. It was going to be one of the big compliments I had for this year. Is I don't want to see a lot of criticism or a lot of like attempts to overhaul this system, because I think it's working, and I want to see one more year of data. I think they fixed a lot with the preloaded averages to start the season this year, and that helped. It was still a little bit gamey in the spring season, but this fall season has seemed pretty smooth sailing, and it did, as Ben said, it did reward players who had a good game. They typically went up in value, and guys with a higher average that had a pretty bad game didn't score more than their price or even half their price. They went down pretty heavy, and it did balance out this system really well. I know I'm kind of rambling on this one a little bit, so feel free to cut me off or jump in if you guys have got comments on that. That's just I ran some numbers while Ben was talking, and I wanted to pass those along.
Yeah, that's cool. Mike, what are your thoughts?
As far as the price change system, I think it worked better. I mean, we didn't have the kind of gaming, it wasn't as easy to game. I think it's just kind of the larger overall picture was with the way the prices work. This I don't know if this is repeatable, but it was just very much a snowball effect where if you didn't get a good result in at least what it seemed to me, if you didn't get a good result in the beginning, you started to get really far behind, especially on some of those defenders. We talked about them going up high. I think a part of that was because there were just so few good defenses this year. Um, DC. We basically named them already. DC got good towards the end of the year. Atlanta, Portland was good for a while, and that's kind of about it.
Minnesota,
As far as like
Minnesota's
dependable
defenders
clean sheet.
kept going.
What's that?
Minnesota's defenders kept going too.
Yeah, well, I mean, they would be like good like in spurts. And I think they probably ended up with good averages. Although I feel like a lot of that is because they also get in on some offensive plays. But yeah, I mean that's 4 teams out of 24 in the league. So I think it just kind of made it really tough, and so you're always really kind of fighting behind, especially on defenders, because that's where it would always the crunch would always come in because any good defender you'd want was very expensive. So you'd have to go to kind of a riskier player, and then if that player ended up getting rotated, then you ended up losing more, or you didn't gain as much as you would have otherwise, and you kept losing. So that's the kind of the fact. I don't know if that's a changeable fix, or just kind of a feature of the game that if your budget is going to increase, that's just going to happen. Maybe that's a push towards, hey, let's just not have a fixed budget. But the problem is, if you do fix a budget, there's no way you could afford most of the players by this past week. I mean, I was having a hard time, filling out a team with 125. I think I said is what I filled it, and I can't imagine what would have happened if I had $25 million less. So, because we talked about earlier in the year about maybe changing where the budget didn't increase, which I think is a good thing to kind of prevent that. If we're truly getting into the point of we want casuals, and like Ben said, we want it to be okay to miss a week. One of the things I really disagreed with him on is the idea that you can miss a week in this game. No, you can't. You would lose overall, and you would just lose so much value that you couldn't. You weren't going to catch that up. You may have the illusion of being able to keep playing, but I don't. And honestly, like I don't know that there's really going to be a situation in a fantasy game where you could skip a week and it not hurt you. Like unless like you just save a transfer, in a one transfer a game kind of one transfer a week system, you're always going to fall behind if you miss a week. I think maybe more the better question is how can we make it easier for players so that they don't miss a week, and that's where double game week and limited transfers and all that conversation comes into.
Yeah, I think that the only way you could really miss a week in our version of the fantasy game, and I'd probably even expand this just to all soccer fantasy games in general, is when you're not looking at your overall ranking, is when you're looking at more of those head to heads, especially those that have not the knockout system, so that it's not just based on overall, it's based on your record and your points, and it's going to whittle down into a conference playoff system, because then you could miss a week. Maybe you get a loss that week, but then you can still come back and build up, and you still have a shot at finishing someplace for a playoff system. So I think it's better there. The weekly changes, I think, are definitely helped by more prizes. I saw that was some stuff. I think Kyle mentioned that in chat, having more prizes. They tried that with Extra Time Radio, with their league giving out the jerseys. That's super cool. They've tried that in the past with trying to give out some of those weekly prizes. Perhaps that's something they can look at again. But yes, Mike.
Okay, first of all, they stopped doing it halfway through the season. Actually, not even probably a quarter through the season. We started forgetting to do the prizes, so that was kind of a bummer. Second, and maybe there's a whole conversation we could have about the way Extra Time talks about fantasy. I don't know if we want to get into this in that podcast or not.
No.
But the other part about this is Blade's like, I heard Michael enough last week after the show. I don't need to hear it again. The second part about that is that one of the issues you're going to have with a fall spring season breakup is that you have the prizes in half. So you don't have any big prizes to really give out because the money you have is split. It looks smaller. And I mean, like, frankly, like, there wasn't a whole lot of promotion for prizes outside of the extra time prizes because they were kind of lame considering, if you won overall. It wasn't nearly as impressive as the prizes they've had in the past. And they weren't nearly as plentiful. Basically just, finish at the top of, each of the season and you get a little something. I think, if we're talking about how to promote to casuals and get to people playing, I think one of the biggest issues with the fall season is that it makes you have smaller prizes, which gives you a lot less to promote. And couple the fact that, and Ben didn't really address this, and I kind of wish he had. I don't know what the point of having a fall season is if you're not going to promote it. I think they maybe mentioned it on extra time. We had a whole international break to this, Gold Cup and all this, all these people zooming in, looking, paying attention to soccer with the Women's World Cup and all that, and nothing. Except for maybe I think they mentioned it at the end of extra time when Ben Baer came on to do like a small segment at the end of extra time. So hey, hope you stay tuned in for the whole hour. Then you get to hear a mention that there's a fall season and you can start your team again. All the stuff that Ben said about people rejoining your team, I've never seen that happen. I've only seen it the opposite way where people just fall off. It's been 2 years now. I don't see it being a great benefit. I see much more of the downsides. I really don't know why but it does sound like Ben likes it. So I'm kind of bracing myself for another year.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
So,
Let's Jason, let's get you back in. We're going back and forth a lot here. What are your thoughts on the split season?
I don't. It was fine for me. I mean, I like the idea of having a reset. And the first season I did this season. So I don't have strong thoughts either way. Although, if people do, maybe there's a solution where you actually have 4 seasons as opposed to 2. You figure out some way to break the season up, right? So, and maybe people don't like that either, right? I don't particularly feel strong about it either way. So,
I like how Jason's just just throwing out ideas. We'll see what happens.
So we've talked about it off the show quite a bit. And I'm not going to say I advocate for this because I really don't think I'm going to like it as a hardcore fan. But I think one of the big solutions is to make the game casual friendly is you have to go to a fixed player budget. Player prices can rise. And if it needs to be a progressively rolling budget, you start off the game with 100 million. Week 2, you go to 101. Week 3, you go to 102. Whatever that number is, whatever that price point is, to adjust for player price increases. And then you do weekly prizes. That truly makes it a casual, friendly come and go league. If you miss a week, you may lose it in the overall standings, but you can you're coming in on a level playing field for a weekly prize, trying to get the best score.
100% agree. 100% agree. I think you just go 125, 130 from day one, and that's it.
Yeah,
no
and maybe you do that, and you let the skill game be how to adjust as player values go up towards the end of the season. That may be it. But if you truly want casual friendly and you don't want to punish players for missing a week, you have to have a fixed budget. So no matter what week a casual jumps into play, they're on a level playing field with the rest of the rest of the community for a weekly prize. Season long prizes. If you miss weeks, you're done. Like you've got to play the full season to get a season long prize, unless you're just stupid good or get lucky with one of your off weeks. But no, that's the only way I can see to make it truly casual friendly and do a come and go league where if they really want to go crazy to appease both sides, you do a pseudo fixed budget, but you get small price increases. Maybe you get a quarter of your increase every week. So that way, if you go up the full, what is it? We figured up it's about 5.5 that you can pretty much max out to start the season. You can go a little bit higher, but if you go up a full 5 points, you get, or a full 5 million, you get 1 point. If you go up only $1 million, you get 200,000 added to your budget, and you just chop that number down by a set amount every week. But that doesn't, I don't like that. That's just, you could do kind of you could lessen the impact of budgets getting out of control, because really this game, I think we figured out after these 2 years on it, if you get behind in the budget game, you just stop being able to compete towards the end of the season.
Mike.
And that really does hurt.
And I think the one issue with, and I understand why Blaine is saying the way he did, and that does make a lot of sense as far as like, from that, if you take the position that that's the casual approach. But I think there's a few problems with it. One, I think that game already exists and it's daily fantasy. So essentially MLS is just free daily fantasy, because that's all it's going to be. There's no week-to-week impact other than the player prices, which that happens in daily fantasy. So if we're just going to overemphasize weekly prizes, then MLS is just a free version of daily fantasy. Ben did mention the MGM sponsorship, possible tie-in, and Bobby Warshaw also mentioned, when he came on the podcast in the summer, about gambling being more important. I don't know if that's the direction we want the game to be, if that's the only way we can get in fans. To me, I think there's a larger question that, and this is where we get into what I wanted to talk about and what I hinted at Twitter, which is, I think we've got to challenge the assumption that unlimited transfers is actually casual friendly. And that hurts me, because when Ben is talking about all the players who wanted it, I was one of those players with the injury frustrations.
It's true.
And I'm not going to pretend that the injury situation has gotten better. It's gotten much, much worse. The problem is, you are forcing people to make, really almost 17 choices with the switcheroos, with the system we have now, as far as number of players we get in. So you've got to do all of that work. And if we want to have any kind of decent budget system where there's any kind of challenge, those are tough choices. I will spend a lot more time this year making choices than I did last year. And I think that is a credit to the price system that worked a lot better, that didn't allow me to have a runaway budget. It's also because my budget was terrible, because I made mistakes early in both seasons. But then, in order to really compete, to really be one of the top players, you also had to be paying attention for Saturday games. Even when there was double game weeks, a lot of times you needed to be on that Saturday game. And for this year, my family obligations, I couldn't do it. And I was dumbfounded by how much of a difference that made. And I think for casuals, especially if you're not going to introduce a feature where you get a notification, I can't check Twitter lineups for 12 different games, especially with the way MLS is going. It's from almost noon Saturday all the way up to like 10 o'clock at night, where you getting games rolling. Where Jojo had posted in chat where he said, I think the schedule has forced limited, we have to have limited transfers. I disagree. I think the fact that we have more games and we're going to add a 13th game next season, I think that makes it that it's too much to handle, because you have too many games spread out in order to be handling all these different lines.
Yeah, I want to.
No one can possibly keep up.
Yeah, I want to jump in right on that. Think back to yourself over this season. Saturdays with a 2 o'clock kickoff and 6 o'clock kickoff and a 7:30 and an 8:30 and a 9:30 and a whatever. How does that compare to Sunday when all the games kicked off at one time? Now, I'm part of the Discord channel with the MLS lineup feed, so I got to see all the lineups in one column and scroll right through them. Made it super easy. But still, if I know for me it was 2:30 and 3, or 2 to 2:30 was when all the lineups came out in my time. I knew at about 2 o'clock I needed to be watching for lineups. By about 2:30 I had all of my lineup information, and I was ready to make my transfers. You look at a league like EPL where, yeah, they've got some Saturday and Sunday games, but they've got, 3 kickoff times on Saturday? They've got the early games and the late games, and then they've got the prime time game, which is usually just 2 teams playing right there. That's 3 time slots you have to watch for lineups coming out. On a typical MLS Saturday, we have 6 or 8 time slots that we have to look for. And heaven forbid, if you're an East Coast player who is not a night person and you get stuck with one of those 7 o'clock Pacific time kickoffs or 8 o'clock Pacific time kickoffs, you're looking at 10, 11 o'clock at night your time, and you might just be screwed on that one anyway. I know there are some people who do not stay up late, have work obligations on the weekend, they can't stay up late. Like, that makes it the MLS schedule is a killer. And I just wanted to echo what Mike was saying there, that I can definitely see that argument. And just think back to the season. Are these hectic Saturdays with all the games at different times better, or make it better or worse than what we had Sunday with every game kicking off at the same time?
Yeah, and just to kind of keep going, so I feel like a casual player is not going to be paying attention to all those different lines. If our casual player, in the idea of the model, I think to use is player who cares about their MLS team, who maybe goes to their games and maybe sort of pays attention to the rest of the league. I don't think that this system really benefits them. I think a system of limited transfers, where it locks and maybe we, eliminate the double game weeks, and I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, so that or lessen their impact, so that they're not, you have more of a chance. You have the full week to do your transfers anytime during that, and you just roll with it. And if the weird injuries happens, it sucks, but then it usually will happen to everyone. So, I think that makes it a little bit more casual friendly. And I mean, because of right now, when you have the weird unexpected injuries, most of the casuals aren't picking up that information either, unless they're on their phone checking up Twitter lineups of teams that they don't care about. And I just don't see that casuals have been really picking up. And the bottom line is, we went to this system thinking that it would draw more people in, and we haven't gotten increases of numbers. So,
and I think we can't depend on the system to do it all for us. And I think that's the point we've all hit several times. Ben touched on it as well. I mean, it has to be a combined league effort, a team effort, and from all those points, like get a sponsor, get one of the Continental or Cheez-It or whoever they're getting to throw a couple $1,000s for some prizes at the fantasy game. Get the teams to do something with their social media. I mean, even if it's not what Houston used to do several years ago, where they would take their top scoring fantasy player for that week to the back of the locker room to meet a player. Like, get the social to throw it out there. Tweet out. Like, I saw ESPN today or yesterday when I was sitting down at lunch, and it was just, oh, hey, here are the top 5 fantasy scores for the week in the ESPN fantasy game. It's like that have each team tweet out their top scoring fantasy player, something like that, just to kind of get people going. Maybe we need. Go ahead.
I was just going to point out, Manchester City does that with its U.S. based EPL game. Yeah. Like, just, I mean, and this is something that's difficult for us, where we've heard Ben and we gotten information that for some reason it's difficult. I don't understand why it's difficult for that. I don't understand why it's just a memo. Hey, once a week, put out, here are your top 5 players in your league, and send them a congratulations. Even if you're not doing a prize to them, you can do something to generate content, to generate part of the conversation. And I mean, that's the biggest thing. I don't think that going back to limited transfers, I'm not like, what I'm not changing is the idea that if we go back to closer to an FPL system, that suddenly all these people are going to come back in droves. No, that's not happening. Yeah, if we're going to have more people, we're going to have to promote the game. And MLS is going to have to invest its money. It's not just going to be a magical sponsor coming in unless it happens. The most likely thing is MLS saying, we care about this. We're going to put our foot down. We're going to force teams to talk about this. And we're going to say, hey, you want to be part of our national broadcast? This is one of the points you have to mention. Instead of the stupid Audi index but hey, you know what? Audi sponsors a stupid index, and Audi sponsors the bracket challenge. We can't get like a Target mention, or any of these other sponsors to do it.
Drop the index and sponsor the fantasy game.
Well, I mean, just add it on, or just do something.
it'd be
To me, it
it'd be
doesn't make
perfect.
It doesn't
It'd be
nothing.
perfect for Target to sponsor fantasy for the players. I like that one because they are a pretty big league sponsor anyway. They could advertise in all their stores for the stuff, but they give out gift cards. I mean, if Target's willing to throw prizes in and give out gift cards, they're making money on the profit margin there. They're not giving out as much as the gift card value actually says because of all that.
Yep.
But that's just free advertising for everything, and it's going to get the MLS fans to come into their store that win the prizes and use the money there. And usually when you're in someplace using a gift card, you spend more than what the gift card is worth.
Let's
So
get 538 to sponsor it. That could be fun. I like how that
that,
works.
yeah,
Maybe we need
yeah.
some sort of combination. Like I like Shannon in chat mentioned that now she's saying delicious gift cards, but before she said delicious gift cards, she mentioned the chip system that EPL has. So maybe a blend of what lots of people have been talking about could be the future of what MLS could look towards, where maybe we go back to a more structured transfer system. Maybe not, since we're getting this partnership with MGM, and daily is what people in America and around the world, I don't think it's fair to say just America, but around the world, daily is very popular because it is easy for people, and maybe that's what people want to see. But maybe we go back to a structured sort of fantasy limited transfer system. Let's bring in something that Jason was saying, combined with what Sherry was saying, and we add more chips. We add more little unique things that you can select to do at different points of the year. You get 4 wild cards. So like Jason was saying, you have 4 resets in the year where you can just change up your team. Maybe you get more than 4 wild cards because of the schedule that we have. Personally, I like the idea of a fixed budget at 125, 130 million. That's just it. The game becomes how can you build within that budget. I even like the idea of having, we've mentioned this before with the double game weeks, of you just get the highest scoring one. Like eliminate that, open up the player pool to make more of the single game week players valid during a double game week. So maybe that's what you could do if you want to keep the multi-transfer system but still make everyone viable and move away from the template team with that.
Well, and I think the double game week suggestion that you mentioned, we've talked a lot about that one off air. I think that's a great suggestion regardless of whether it's limited or unlimited transfers. And I think the main reason for that is that then you're not screwed if you miss that Wednesday deadline. Because, I mean, you know, I know whenever I was playing with Ben, that's the one that killed me is I couldn't make that Wednesday deadline because with it locking, you know, when you're not able to make changes until Monday. And then you only have Monday night, Tuesday, and then a little bit of Wednesday if you get home in time to make those transfers. If you know you're doing it at home and you're not doing it, I think if you eliminated the double game weeks, you know, or we make it the 1 point, the top one counted, even if you missed Wednesday, on Thursday, hey, I got all these other teams. They'll be competitive. They'll have single game week scores. I can do that. And we've even talked about, you know, maybe you can even transfer players from those double game week teams, but you're only eligible for the second score. I don't know if that's functional in the app interface or whatever. I know we have enough trouble with the app already. I don't know if asking something like that is too much. But I mean, something like that, I think it does a number of things. One, it allows people more time to make transfers. Number 2, it allows more times for us to have conversations about transfers. I mean, Fantasy United FC went to one show a year, one show a week this week. I think it definitely hurt them because most of the time they really didn't have a whole lot of time to talk fantasy. You know, Ben kind of talked about it a little bit. Most of the time it was just Matt and Bobby having like fun soccer conversations and oh yeah, we got to make some picks by the way, and they threw in some picks at the end. I think if they had, you know, 2 episodes a week, you'd have more time for that. I mean, for us, we're locked into Monday because if we don't get this podcast out on Tuesday, people are really going to have like 2 hours to listen to the podcast in order to get picks. We've talked about, you know, Reid going on the show with Jason Davis on Fridays, be like, well, you kind of missed it, so you're kind of screwed if you don't. We would have a whole lot more opportunities for conversations. Extra time would have reasons to talk about it on Monday and on Thursday. Hey, did you miss the Wednesday game? Don't worry, still more games. I think that would make it very casual friendly. I understand Ben not wanting to lose games, but I don't think he would lose games in that circumstance because then both games are something that we would have to talk about and figure out, hey, what are the impacts of these games? What is the most likely high score? But then you're going to have a lot more single game week players come in. I think you're going to have a lot more strategy because, I mean, this week, I think one of the reasons it was such a slog this year is because you didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to differentiate yourself. Now, part of that was because Carlos Vela was amazing and you had to have him in your team, half the years or half the weeks of the year, if not more than that. The other part of that, it was you just had, with so many dense double games, you had 3 or 4 teams, or 3 or 4 games on Wednesday night, which means you had 8 teams, so many more weeks. You almost had to have a full double game week team most weeks. And there's so much less chance for differentiation, even with the 3-player a week thing. I think, quite frankly, if we had 4 players a team this year, I think we'd have like the exact same team like almost every week, just with the way it ended up this year. I think if we did something like that, I think we'd have much more variety because you'd have much more single game week teams, and it would be a lot more opportunity both for content creation, which could drive participation, and more opportunities for casual. So that's why I think it's something, regardless of the transfer system, because it sounds like from the interview, and I'm not surprised that Ben is going to stick with unlimited transfers. And I do understand why that is with the injury situation in MLS, but I think that change might be one of the more helpful things, regardless of what his decision is on transfers.
Yeah, and I use that system. We use that system in a draft league that I've played in for 5 years now, where you get the highest score of the double game week when you choose to play them, or you can put them, if you miss that lineup, you can put them in for the second game, and they don't tie down that roster spot. So you could essentially drop out a Maxi Morales who's injured for the first game, not put him in your lineup, but you don't have to commit to him on Wednesday. You could see if he's going to play on Saturday and go pick him up for the second game of the week. If you still like that matchup, you don't have to worry about all of that, hoping he plays. And it really does open up the score. You do get 2 bites at the apple, but if those 2 bites are a 2 and a 3, you're better off probably going with a single game week guy who had a better shot at a clean sheet. It really makes you think about those players, and those are decisions I've had to make pretty much every week playing draft fantasy with this other league. And it is a good system. It has been beneficial. It doesn't overemphasize double game week players. And in draft, when you're worried about, oh, this guy's a homer and drafted 5 Atlanta players early, and Atlanta's got a double game week. Now I'm dealing with playing against 5 Atlanta players on this team because I just didn't pick them up because I wasn't that big of a fan of them. I've got better players, but they're all playing 2 games this week. It really does balance that out in that league, and I can see it doing the same thing here. And I would hope that if we go forward, they would make a change similar to that, just to help prevent the whole thing. And to Mike's point, don't know if it's coding friendly, but if you watch players on Saturday as you're picking your lineup and you see it, they usually have on Wednesday, before Wednesday, they'll have versus this team and versus this team when they've got 2 home games. And on Saturday, it's only got the one versus the second team. It drops that first one off. So they've already got flags set for what's remaining. It may be a little bit of a coding nightmare, but being a programmer, if you've already got that flag and you're dropping off the first game, that means you're calculating that somewhere, and you can reference that value to find out when the player was added and get that second game only. I mean, there should be potential for that.
All right, so we've got on for a long time tonight, so I thank everyone who stuck with us to the very end here. I want to acknowledge a few people in chat real quick. I've seen Shannon and JoJo and Kyle and lots of people making comments during this whole conversation. People have talked about the stats in the game. They've talked about the dream team being accurate. They've talked about the buttons and things working out. I think those are all great changes. I know I saw this on Twitter some too, I would love for all of the stats that players are graded on to be filterable in the game. So, I mean, I think those are all great changes. Final question for the guys tonight, and final question for everybody in chat, for everyone to think about before we sign off. One change. If you get one change for next season, what is the one thing you want to see different in 2020? Blaine, let's start with you.
Oh, you would start with me.
Gameplay.
Yeah, no. Gameplay wise, it would be the double game week thing that we were just talking about.
Okay.
Only count one score.
Mike.
Yeah, that's probably it because I'm assuming Ben's not going to change the transfers.
Well, this is not what do you think Ben will do. This is you get to make one change. What is your one change that you think?
I think I would do the double game thing
Okay.
too, and we'll do that, because we'll see what the price structure will be, as far as that, but because I know there's been some we've talked about whether or not we need to do more weekly structure. We talked about that a little bit, but just in general, maybe the bigger change is I would like to see fantasy talked about on national broadcasts.
My
I
thing,
think it comes in part with a sponsor, but I think
yeah,
we've got to have part of a conversation, and it's got to be MLS needs to make a conscious effort. It's not just going to happen.
yeah, like non-gameplay wise, it would be finding a legit sponsor like Audi does, like Cheez It does. Just find a legit sponsor for the game. And I know Mike's bigger on the promotion, but I mean, you get either one of those two things, and I think the game's going to skyrocket a little bit.
I
But
think
that's not gameplay wise.
I'm just saying MLS Fantasy sponsored by Disney Plus's The Mandalorian would be the best thing.
That'd be good. I thought there would be some more variance between what we all would say with this final question, but I'm in agreement with what you guys. I mean, I would have put money on that. Mike would have been like, go back to limited transfers. I agree. Gameplay wise, I think the double game week system that we talked about of just taking one game would be the number one change I would like to see. I don't think it's huge. I think it could be easily understood by new and returning players, and I think it would just be such an impact on the roster variety that you would have during a double game week because of the single game week players truly being in the mix as valuable options would just be a huge step in giving players truly the freedom to craft the team they want, which is what we always talk about. You have the freedom with unlimited transfers to craft the team you want, and they would have that with that change. From the business side, like you both alluded to, so we'll do one on each side. I would say that I would just like to see more team involvement. I'd like to see that weekly post of here's who did great with fantasy, or have a player tweet out to the top scoring person, congrats on being our number one player this year. Now that would sort of require the fantasy game to also maybe collect that information of, hey, what's your Twitter name, and be like, we're gonna give you a shout out, that kind of thing, or just their team name. Congrats to Sherry for being great in the Fantasy Insider League. Like something like that would be great too. I'd like to see something like that of more team involvement, because I think that could help spread people's interest, at least in trying the game. So those are my two things. That's where we're going to end tonight. I know there's lots to go on. Please go over to the Discord channel, go over to r/FantasyMLS, go over to Twitter, let us know what you think. This is all that we have for this season. We're in the off season now for MLSFI, because we're going to sit back and enjoy these games. We've got a special side project podcast in the plan, so stay tuned for that. We'll share some of that if you haven't figured it out already. But it's been a fantastic season, and I think good things are still to come in 2020. A lot of that is thanks to the continued involvement of people like you who are listening to us, people who are in chat with us, and who support us with Patreon. So, Blaine, final comments.
Yeah, just thank you to the community, especially all of our chat regulars who have been coming out to watch us do the live shows and participate in those. That's been a huge boost for just how I feel about the show this year. I mean, I've always loved doing this, but just getting to interact with everybody has been great. And I mean, we do it for the community, and just having the community here with us every night when we do this has been wonderful. The show doesn't exist without you all, so that's huge for me this year. Just enjoyed interacting with everybody all year long.
Mike.
Yeah, I'll echo what Blaine said. I think the best way to experience MLS is with the fantasy MLS community. I think it's the best conversations. You learn so much about the game. I really believe that this is the most informed part of the fan base. I think it's the least toxic fan base.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many people with different teams who are normal rivalry elsewhere on Twitter and Reddit and all that, just getting ugly and nasty to each other. Here we usually just josh each other a little bit and then keep on laughing. Like, yeah, my player sucks. You don't want. It's just such a great community, and it's just such a great way to experience fantasy or to experience MLS. I just wouldn't have it any other.
And I'll give a final big thanks to JoJo, who's been one of our loyal chat listeners up in Canada. I believe he is the newest Patreon supporter at our $3 level. I think he was the last one that we got for this year. He mentioned that he signed up, and I have sent him a sticker. So I've sent you a sticker, JoJo. It's going through the whole Canadian Post international stuff. So I sent that last week, so with hope it gets there pretty soon. It didn't have the special fancy extra secret prize that Mike got in his, and some of the people at the $5 level did, but maybe he'll send a tweet out with that special that he had. But thank you so much to everyone who has supported us in Patreon. Almost all of the swag has been sent out. Some of the people at the highest tiers, I ran out of envelopes, and so I'm waiting to get some more envelopes so I can send you out what I have for you this year. Next year, we're going to have some new prizes, so I'll be sending out all new swag. It should be a whole lot of fun. Thank you to everyone who's listened, who's contributed, who's just been a part, who's been guests, and who shares the media that we have. It's been such a fun ride. Looking forward to it next year as we welcome some new players into the league. It's going to be crazy. We'll start working on our preseason content. If you have feedback for us, let me know. MLSFantasyBoss@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Twitter as well, or Mike or Blaine. We're all available there, always taking feedback. So for the last time in 2019, thank you very much, and good luck. All right. We're going to chat a little bit more. We're going to stop let's see, I think as soon as I stop streaming, it'll stop the chat. So a few more questions with you guys. I know it's getting late, but we'll hang on a little bit longer for those of you in chat who may have any more questions.
It's the longest episode of the year.
It always is. I mean, it always is.
Mike, what was the super secret thing in the Patreon package?
Oh, it's a picture of of us, and it's a freeze frame. It's that.
Oh.
And it's the worst picture of me because it's just like me in a white t-shirt, just looking like, I hate this.
But it's wallet size. It's wallet size, and so it goes into like the little thing here, and I thought it was amazing.
Oh, that is awesome.
I'm not even wearing a scarf.
Oh, you got the hat on me though.
Yes, you got the hat on. It's in your old setup too, so you're a little bit blurry. But next year we'll do something different, I guess. But I was just like, what can I do? Because like some of with the changing of our format for the people at the $5 level, it didn't work to have some of those special hangouts and chats and things like that. And so I was like, I want to do something for the people. And so I was like, I'm going to make this little like special card insert thing and send it out to everybody at the $5 level. So, thoughts on the playoff bracket? I think LAFC is going to win. I think it's going to come down to New York City and LAFC. That's what I think. I think New York City will beat Atlanta, and then that'll be the final game, and that LAFC will win. Mm-hmm. Blaine thinks Minnesota's going to win, but he's wrong.
I think Minnesota's going to beat LA in LA. I mean, they've shown
I can see it. I haven't filled up my bracket yet because of that game. Like, I'm staring at it like I could see this happening.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to go like too crazy on it, but they've shown that they can compete out in LA. I see them tripping them up. That bye week's going to hit them, and yeah, I like that matchup. I think they're the only team that can beat them, and it's very rare to win a Shield and the MLS Cup in the same year. We've got a few teams that have done it, but it doesn't happen often. And I just think this is going to be one of those years where it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, I feel like LAFC is going to get tripped up. It's really what I've been trying to figure out is where they would get tripped up. Minnesota is an option. I think LAFC probably wants to play the Galaxy instead because the Galaxy defense is just so big. And I think they want to finally win that. But I think they play Minnesota, and I think it's a tough game. But I mean, I think LAFC is still favored. then the other side of the bracket, I was looking. I was like, I guess Seattle comes out of it. I'm like, I mean, like, what I really don't want to see is a Portland run. That's what I don't, because I was worried about them doing ugly soccer.
Fernandez just went into the substance abuse program,
Yeah.
which is going to cut it. Which I don't know if that's going to help a Bobasee's mindset or not, because he's always had that. He's having to compete with Fernandez for the starting minutes, and when you basically get gifted the spot, it can change how you play. And I'm worried about that for him. But I don't want to see Portland make the run. But Valeri's been missing. I don't know if he's hurt or what. Like, didn't play on decision day. That's odd. Maybe they are trying to save him for that playoff run
that they're going through with the extension, and he wants more money and all that.
But
they were saying he has like a calf injury.
Yeah.
I think that was the official thing. I think.
See, I don't feel like Valeri's the kind of guy to be like, if you are like, I'm not going to show up my teammates because I don't have a contract for next year. Like, you're done with that team. You know, I'm just like,
I don't think it's him. I don't think it's him. Like, I think a lot of players would be going crazy at that right now, shouting and doing all this, and he's not. Like, I don't think that's the kind of guy that he is. And even when Blanco got the money, I think he is. And I don't know if he said he wouldn't play, or if they just don't want him to play, or if that kind of thing. But I mean, I think he's handled it very well publicly.
Yeah, and I don't know if they have a contract option for him or if he's out of contract at the end of the season. I don't know what that status is. Like, if he doesn't sign, if they don't get him,
City re-sign Maxi.
Yeah, like, I don't know if he doesn't sign something, if they don't offer him much, can he just walk and go wherever he wants to at the end of the season, or is he tied in for another year and he's just trying to negotiate more money? But if he's free to walk, like, yeah.
My understanding is he's free to walk.
Yeah.
I mean, but we've all seen Blanco's stats and stuff, and he's not far behind Valeri in some of the production. So he's a year younger. Maybe that's what they're putting their money on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're thinking if we give a DP contract, you know, to him at his age, it'll hurt us in that last year of the contract. Which, I mean, I get.
But yeah, no, I hope RSL can knock off Portland. I just don't want to see them do anything and get a type of run, because I'm pretty sure Seattle's going to beat Dallas. It's just that's the way it's going. And Portland, Seattle, I hate those matchups because they can go either way. No matter who has the advantage, they can go either way. And
that's why I was glad the Red Bulls got put on the other side of the bracket. Like, I just no, I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
My heart can't take that. I really do. I'm really not. It's like super excited that we're probably going to be playing TFC. Like that. Of all of the games that we've had this year, like that was, I think, the only team we didn't beat of all the playoff teams.
I think your opponent comes down to whether or not Josie is actually in.
Yeah.
If Josie's injured, I don't know that.
Not injured, I don't know if they make it past DC. If Josie's out, if Josie's hurt, I could see DC with Rooney just making that a really ugly game and then hitting them on the counter once.
Yeah, and what there was talk about who would replace Josie in the men's national team lineup if he has to withdraw due to injury. I mean, that discussion was going around on Twitter. I think Doyle said Abobasi needs to call up.
Yeah,
but I mean, who cares who it is? Like, if they're contemplating Josie withdrawing due to injury, he's either doing that to not aggravate it and give himself an extra week's rest so he can play in the playoffs, or he's really hurt and he may not be ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, I don't think that Josie's gonna play in Nations League games. I mean, because one of them is against Cuba. I mean, regardless of who we put on the field, we should win that one. Like, God, I mean, like, half the team is already defected, so we should win that one. It's more about what we do against Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see Josie be like, Jossie, you got this one. I'm going to go stay and make sure I can be ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, and the matchup I'm most excited for is I want to see New England and Atlanta. I know they just played this last weekend.
Sorry, I was responding.
Oh, no, you're good.
That's a
Yeah,
whole other conversation. What were you saying, Blaine?
Yeah. I'm really excited for New England and Atlanta. I know they just played this weekend, but
Yeah,
I wonder if
New
I wonder
England
if
didn't.
Bruce Arena said, don't go in, don't go in all the way. We're gonna have to play Atlanta at some point. We might as well give them a little bit of extra confidence and go play them in the first round.
So what deal with the devil do you think Arthur Blank made to heal Joseph Martinez? Like, I'm stunned that he played.
You
Like,
know,
not only he was available to play, but also that
yeah. I think he wanted a chance at the goal scoring record.
Yeah.
I really think
I
he
think he does.
he fought back, and I don't think the injury was as bad as initially reported. I know when we see hamstring, we always think longer, but and from the initial social media talks, I think he was listed as questionable that first week after the injury. He didn't end up making the lineup, but I think they had him listed as questionable almost instantly, which made me think he was going to be back before the end of the season. And I think everybody just assumed Atlanta was going to hold him out to wait for the playoffs, and that's not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for live chat. It's been absolutely fantastic. Good luck with the bracket challenge, and we will see you next year unless you want to join us for our Star Wars reading club. So keep an eye out for that. All right. See you all later, and good luck.